Emily Berry here from Praizion Media. Here in this Earned Value Management video, we're going to cover everything that test takers need to know for the Project Management Institute's exams, like the PMP exam and the CAPM exam. Also, anyone who's not exam bound, but is interested in being able to control projects at any given point in time to understand if you are going to meet that budget and whether or not there needs to be some changes made early on so that you can meet the mark at the end of your project. This also works for people who are in non-project environments but are working with budgets. So this, we see, is our budget. The blue line right there. The yellow line are all the costs that we've spent up until today, which is July. Right here at the bottom is where we have our earned value metrics. The planned value is the estimated cost or the actual budgeted cost for work scheduled. Previous to today, that's the same as our earned value because we're 100% complete of our work. So our earned value is what the work was actually worth. But we do have some planned value after today because the planned value is, hey, coming up, what do we have to spend? And we have no earned value. We have no earned value for that because we haven't done any work in August, September, and October. Then the actual costs are the receipts. That's why it trickles off down here. So actual costs would be how much we spent for the work. Earned value is, well, how much was the work actually worth? And we can see here we're spending more for the work than what it's actually worth to us when we budgeted it. So this tells us, oh, we have a little bit of a problem. We could look at our cost management plan and see, is it a major problem? Do we have a tolerance for being this much over budget totally? And this is monthly. Or, should we make a change request or do something different? Thank goodness the bulk of the work is done, so we don't have too much more to worry about. But when you do earned value management, at any point in time, you can analyze this and then make the proper adjustments before it's too late. So how do you make a chart like this? You make a spreadsheet with data and with formulas, and then you use a spreadsheet function to make a line chart like that. The chart part is easy. The data part you're probably gathering also. The data that you need would be your estimated costs. That's your planned value. What did we estimate for each one of these activities, these work packages, or each month? The percent complete. Hey, how much work has been finished, looking like a percentage. If you use project management spreadsheet software, you have this already documented generally. And then your actual costs. You might have to talk to your accounts payable department or someone else that has the invoices or has this actual information, but you need it. You need to know what your actual costs are, and this comes from payroll and materials and equipment and facilities and everything that you're responsible, direct costs to your project. Here are all the formulas. Of course, we're going to go through them one by one, but these are all the formulas that allow you to understand at any point in time, how am I doing and how's it going to look in the future? So you can go to Praizion.com and test yourself. If you are someone who's here because you want to take the PMP exam, go through this video, go ahead and take a few quizzes, and that'll let you know how you'll fare on the exam. So let's get started on earned value management. Here we're just looking at a spreadsheet, right? I mean, I'm not showing you Excel. I just copied it from Excel, but you get the gist. So we've got January and February. These are literally our cost estimates. When we went through, we said, oh, we're going to spend $500,000 in January and $475,000 in February. Here's all the other information, a percent complete, earned value. We're going to go through a formula so that you can calculate that. Throw it in your spreadsheet. You never have to worry about it again. Actual costs, the information that is coming from your accounting department or wherever. Cost variance, this is a formula, schedule variance. CPI and SPI, these are all formulas that we'll go through, of course. But this tells us that, hey, we were under budget here. We were over budget here. This is telling us that we have $71,000 more work to do in February before we're done with all the work that we had planned to do. This reports the same information. It's just not in dollar values. It just shows us in an index here. We are 0.59, right? That's about 6%, right? Not great, not great. Sorry, 6D%. We are 40% over budget is what this 0.59 tells us. 0.85 tells us we have done 85% of the work. We still have more work to do in February. But let's go through it one by one, right? So planned value. This is the budgeted cost for the work scheduled. It's your cost estimate. It's based on the output of your cost estimating and budgeting processes. So January is going to have a price tag of $500,000. February has a price tag of $475,000. Percent complete. This is simply a value that represents the amount of work that has been completed. You might have some type of rule for reporting that says once it's started, it's 20% complete. Once it's done, it's 100% complete. Or you might actually have some consistent way of determining what percent complete you are. This is something that you get to decide on among your team, among your group, among the people to which you report. We're measuring time frames, month here, very commonly, and on the PMP exam, you're doing this by work package or by activity. But for us, for this, it makes more sense to do it by month because this would be you reporting to the stakeholders about how we're doing in January. You just have to be consistent with the way that you break up. Do it by month, do it by work package, doesn't matter. But all the work from January has been complete, and most of the work from February has been completed. So earned value is what the work was worth, regardless of how much we paid for it. So we budgeted $500,000 in January. When we're done with that, that's the value. We earned that value. So the earned value for January is $500,000, and it's a very easy formula. It's your planned value times your percent complete, right? So $500,000 times 100% complete is $500,000. Let's do February. Here we've got a different value, 475 times 0.85, because 0.85 is 85% complete. So we've earned $403,000 in February. We've got that much value worth of work that's been done. Let's look at the actual cost, though, because we're always comparing our earned value against our actual costs when we're looking at our budget. So this is based on our receipts. Ooh, wow, look at that, January, fantastic. We only paid $260,000. That was it. Since we're 100% complete, we know there's no more money that we have to spend in January. We're done. We've already spent $680,000 in February, and we still have more work to be done. So our cost variance then is what you might have done in your head already. This tells us how much over or under budget we are, and it's comparing your earned value to your actual costs. Here we're doing it again on a per month basis because that's how we set up our planned value. And month by month is what we did here. So our cost variance is simply taking a look at our earned value minus our actual costs. So the formula is EV minus AC. Cost variance equals earned value minus actual costs. You would have done that in your head anyway without actually having that formula, no doubt. So $500,000 minus $260,000 equals $240,000. We are under budget by $240,000. But when we look at February, we have a different story. Same formula always. Earned value comes first. When it's a variance, it's always subtraction. EV minus AC. In this case, we have a negative number here. On the exam, be very careful so that you know. Because you may do a calculation and come up with a positive number, but there's another answer that's a negative number. So make sure you read thoroughly on the exam. I loved these questions on the exam because they were factual. You can't get this wrong if you memorize the formulas and have the data available to use. In the real world, you can't get this wrong either because it's simple math and simple numbers. The problem is when you didn't budget or you spent too much, and then in the real world, you actually have to talk about that and figure out a solution for that. Why are we over budget? Maybe there was a risk event that happened there. So we'd have to analyze why, what happened. If this is something that's going to continue on for the rest of our project, or if it's just a bump in the road and we're going to get back on track. And we'll talk about that coming up. So schedule variance then is not about time, it's not about duration, it's about the value for the work that we have budgeted in that time period or for that work package. So how much more money needs to be spent to complete that work? And if you want to know about duration, if you're really behind schedule, that's where you look at the milestones. Oops, we missed a milestone. We're a month behind. Versus this, which is, oh, how much more money do we have to spend to get through this schedule? So schedule is always 0 when the work is 100% complete, the schedule variance, because we have no more work to do, so it's always 0. Schedule variance is a very easy formula. Like cost variance, it's subtraction. Earned value always comes first. If it's a variance, it's always subtraction. So EV minus PV equals SV. Let's take a look. Oh, that's the easiest formula you'll ever do. $500,000 minus $500,000 is 0. Our schedule variance is 0, which tells us we are done. Right? Here's same formula, $403,000. Because earned value always comes first. That's why we calculate earned value, so we can figure out our variances and our indexes. We do the subtraction. We're $71,000 behind schedule. We have $71,000 more work to do, and we're $276,000 over budget. So that tells us that we're going to be even more over budget by the end of this month, and we may want to consider that and make some changes, or maybe we can't make any changes right now, but we're going to have to think about the future a little bit more. Are we going to continue on this trend, in other words? All right, so schedule performance index is going to show us that percentage here. Because some people don't care, oh, you have $71,000 more work to do? That means nothing to me. But if they know, oh, you have 15% work left still coming up to do in this month, that tells them something. So schedule performance index is a ratio, the value of the work completed to the planned work. So earned value and planned value are what will go into our formula here. Indexes are ratios, therefore it's division. Same numbers as the variance, it's just we're doing division. Earned value always comes first. EV divided by PV equals SPI. Great. So we see if you're on schedule, or meaning if you've completed the work that was scheduled, then you have a 1 for your index, means you're right on. Here we see two comparisons, two charts, right? So it's the same data that we're comparing. Variances versus indexes. So we have a different different y-axis here. 200,000 to negative 300,000 is what our cost variance is veering from for 2 months only. And our schedule, not that big of a deal. We have the same slope here. It intersects at a different spot just because our x-axis is a little bit different. When we're talking about indexes, usually we're right around pretty tight about the 1. We're pretty tight around the 1 when we're talking about indexes. This is just that was way under budget in January. The point that I'm trying to make here is that it's the same information no matter what. It tells the same story. It's just about how do you want to describe this to people? Do you want to say that we've got 15% more work to do and we're whatever percent over budget? Or do you want to use dollar values? It depends on your stakeholders, so you'll want to analyze that and use the information that will get through the best and the easiest to your audience. Now, did you notice that the SPI and the percent complete were the same? You probably did. I pointed it out. So schedule performance index is, as we know, the ratio of the work completed, which is the earned value, to what you planned. So EV divided by planned value is your SPI. And so that's really the same as, well, what percent complete are we? But the thing is, it gets really interesting when we get into our cumulative SPI, when we're forecasting. When we're forecasting, that's when we need this. Or if you're really trying to talk to people about your overall schedule performance, how much more do we need to complete on this project before it's finished, that's where cumulative SPI is going to come in. Cumulative SPI is SPI with a little C superscript above it. That's how you'll see it. There's also cumulative CPI. It has the same way to denote that. So it's the same formula as SPI. It's the sum. It's the sum of all the earned value divided by the sum of all the planned value. It's the same ratio, but it's project-wide. So it's great. You use a spreadsheet, and you're able just simply to sum up all the earned value, divide it by the sum of all the planned value, leave that there. You'll see a percentage on the right side or wherever you put it on your spreadsheet that lets you know, oh, okay, so even though I'm way behind for this work package or this point in time, it's okay. The rest of my project, is all right. We're basically on track. So Schedule Performance Index is something that you want to calculate because it'll help you to make some decisions. And here we see an example of it, if you didn't guess how to do that anyway. We've got $500,000 plus $403,750 divided by $975,000. So overall, basically we're averaging those two values together. 92%. We have 8% more work to do overall for our project for these 2 months. So we are at a 92% schedule efficiency for our project. Great, cool. That's something, right? But let's do some forecasting. This is really what we want to do as project managers. Yeah, we report on the old, but we need to be able to say, well, this is what's happening. This is what to expect. Predictability. So what will the future be? How much more are we going to spend? And what will the final cost be when it's all said and done? So we've got a couple different scenarios here to be able to determine our estimate at completion. The first one is we budgeted correctly. We were right on with the estimates for how much things will cost. There wasn't some crazy wage increase or interest rate increase, or the price of oil didn't go up in a way that affected our project, whatever it is in your environment. We budgeted correctly. We just didn't do risk assessments so well. There were some major things that we didn't identify, and that's why we've been over budget. So how much now do we think this project will end up costing? The total budget, $5,375,000. $625,000 of work has already been completed, and we've spent $725,000. So think about this. This is a pretty easy scenario. I'm going to give you the actual formula in a moment because that's what test takers want, but I want you to see how you can do this without memorizing and being stressed about a formula at all, because a lot of test takers forget when they're taking the test that you do this stuff in reality all the time. Whether or not you're not the person on the project that does the budget, you do this in your personal life all the time. So let's look at it. How much do you think this project is going to end up costing? Well, how much have we already spent, right? Essentially, so we planned for this project to be over $5 million. I'm not going to say all those numbers in the interest of time anymore. And we've done this much work. So this accounts for what we've done already, and this is how much we've already spent on that work. So essentially, what do we have left to spend is $4 million, almost $5 million left to spend, and then we add to that what we've actually spent, and that tells us that our estimate at completion is now $100,000 more than it was. So our estimate at completion is $5,475,000, right? So does that make sense? Think about that for a moment. We're looking at it. Okay, well, if our total budget is $5 million, we can strike out the work that we've already done, $625,000, but we need to add the money that's actually been spent because that needs to be accounted for overall. How much will this project cost us when it's all said and done? We're only 2 months into this project. Well, here's the formula. If you don't like thinking about it that way, you can memorize the formula. BAC minus AV plus AC equals estimate at completion for the project. It's a forecasting formula. Here's an alternative scenario. same thing. We need to find the estimate at completion, but this case, we didn't budget correctly. Last case we did, we had a risk event. This case, we budgeted correctly, but we know interest rates went up, so everything's going to be off by the same % as before. So what will the final cost be? So it's the budget at completion divided by whatever thing that we just learned that represents a percentage. You know what that is? It's CPI. The cost performance index indicates the % over budget or under budget. Maybe the price of oil is real low now. Maybe that's going to reduce our estimate at completion overall. Okay, so what is the estimate at completion for this project? This is cumulative CPI, though I want to point that out. You calculate cumulative CPI just like you calculate cumulative SPI. It shows you the ratio of the sum of the earned value divided by the sum of the actual costs. So our budget at completion divided by our cumulative CPI equals our estimate at completion. Test takers, you'll be given, generally speaking, the cumulative CPI. You might have to calculate it. I'll show that to you. So division. Test takers also, you have a calculator when you take the exam. In reality, you have this do it once, put it in an Excel spreadsheet, and save it. All right, great. So the estimate at completion for this project is $5,800,000. Ooh, let's compare these two against each other. So our estimate for our original budget was fine. We just had some risk events, some budgets in the road. This one, we're trending that we're always going to be 8% off of budget. So we just are going to need to up the final number that we think this will be. So there's a big difference there between those two, right? Here are the two formulas. Please email me with questions if you have any on this, emily@praizion.com. So here's the formula for cumulative CPI. It's the sum of all your earned value divided by the sum of all your actual costs. That's cumulative CPI. CPI on its own is just EV divided by AC. All right, let's take a look here. Sum of all EV divided by sum of all AC. So here we have August is 10% over budget. October, we forecast that we're going to be 9% over budget. Excellent. So we predict that our estimate of completion is, we're going to go on to a new scenario here, $5,475,000. That's what we went with. We predicted that. We've spent $725,000 total already. So how much more money are we going to spend to complete this project, right? We're forecasting. Hey, we have a new estimate at completion, and we've already spent this much, so how much more money do we need to spend? Easy peasy, right? You did this in your head without thinking that it's a formula. So the question in technical terms is, what is the estimate to complete this project? The estimate to complete, the ETC, is the question we're being asked. We already know our EAC, we know our AC. The technical formula for this is EAC minus AC. Our estimate at completion minus our actual cost would be our ETC. If you don't have an EAC and you want to just go with your original budget, that could be your budget at completion minus your actual cost, and that tells you your estimate to complete. It might not be right if you're over budget, if you're trending, if you had a risk event, but it's something that at least you have that information, then you can analyze how close to that you'll be. So math comes out to $4,750,000 more we need to spend to get to the end of this project. Hopefully we have that. Well, when the project is over, we want to calculate for our records, for our lessons learned, the variance at completion. Variance is the difference between our budget at completion and our estimate at completion. Hopefully they're the same, and in some cases you might make a change request and update your budget so that your EAC becomes your BAC. Depends on how you do things within your environment and if you are that formalized with these types of numbers. So we were over budget by $100,000. Our variance at completion, our VAC, is the formula BAC minus EAC. Budget at completion minus estimate at completion. And that's really pretty great. I mean, I would consider that on budget for a $5 million project. Again, this type of thing is your your tolerance, your cost tolerance. And this is based on your organization, your stakeholders, the type of culture that exists, the type of agreements that exist in your contract. You know, there's no rules. There's no right or wrong for that. But these are all the formulas that we just went through. So congratulations. You now can create a spreadsheet, gather the data, throw the formulas in there, and make a chart or simply a report that you can distribute and talk about in meetings so that you really can spread the word and communicate to people the true health of your project and make the right decisions so that you do have successful projects, or that it's off of totally your shoulders, that you can work with others so that you have the right scope of work, the right amount of resources, and the right budget so that you can meet the requirements that you have on the job. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, Emily@Praizion.com. We'll see you later.